Hi, I'm David Boji, and I'm going to talk about why it's important to boycott Wendy's fast food. And to get a sense of this, we're going to give you a little bit of background on the coalition of Immokalee Workers and the protests that they've initiated over the last decade or more against Wendy's and the major shareholder of Wendy's, Nelson Peltz, and his colleagues, and they control the board of directors of Wendy's. And I'm going to argue in this presentation that what you need to do is follow the monies, follow the money of the billionaire corporate raider, and you will see that Wendy's is dominated by a hedge fund. And this hedge fund, what they essentially do is raid various corporations, including Wendy's, P&G, most recently attempt to raid Disney Corporation that failed. And in that failure, we learned something very important about Nelson Peltz and the hedge fund. It's a little bit like the Wizard of Oz. Like the emperor looked like he was all powerful and claps of thunder and controlling events, except when Toto tore down the curtain in the Dorothy Wizard of Oz. And I'm going to argue that Nelson Peltz is much like the Emperor in the Wizard of Oz. So let's take a look at the corporate raider. Here in the diagram, you see Nelson Peltz is the CEO of the Trian Fund. Trian Fund is a corporate rating firm. They raid corporations. On the right-hand side, they raided General Electric, the Bank of New York Mellon Corporation, Cisco, Wendy's, our topic for today, P&G, Mondelez International, and recently Disney. That one failed. Look at the partners and their control of Wendy's board of directors. Nelson Peltz is the board chair of a Wendy's Corporation now. Matthew Peltz is his son, is one of the directors. Peter May, a partner in Trian Fund, is on the board of directors, and there's several other members of the Trian Fund that are dominating the board of directors. Now, what's interesting about this situation, if you look at the California Public Employees Retirement System, the New York State and local retirement system, Wells Fargo retirement system, the Kaiser Permanente retirement system, essentially what the rating firm Trian Fund does is gather these investors, which are retirement funds of workers. So workers are investing in Trian Fund. And what does the Trian Fund do? It goes after corporations like Wendy's, asks for seats on the board of directors, promises to increase dividends. And how does it get that increase? You got to follow the money. They will trim out the executives' salaries. They will cut down the workforce in the organizations, and they will be particularly brutal against the lowest paid employees. The lowest paid workers, in the case of Wendy's, are the people in the field picking tomatoes. And it's an example of modern day slavery. And that's what we're talking about today. Now, it's reported, allegedly, that Peltz's youngest daughter routinely threatened maids that she would have her father fire them if they didn't do exactly what she said. Her last nanny was reportedly hauled out of the house by two beefy bodyguards that patrolled the mansion after the young girl, she would have been about, 14, 18 at the time, decided she didn't care much for this nanny. Employee turnover at the estate is so high that new faces appear in the house on an almost weekly basis. Now, of course, the Peltz family denies all of this, and I'm using the word allegedly. Well, let's look a little bit more at lifestyles of the rich and famous. Peltz's daughter married Brooklyn Joseph Beckham, the son of the Beckham soccer player. And this was a very controversial wedding because all kinds of lawsuits and countersuits were involved. Brooklyn Beckham and Nicola Beckham wedded, but there were lawsuits put forward by Nelson Peltz saying that the design of the wedding, the execution of the wedding wasn't what he had intended. And so there was the Brigham and Granba, the wedding planners, didn't get their money, and Nelson Peltz wanted to not pay them at all. Lawyers and suits and countersuits, and finally the whole thing got thrown out of court with prejudice. I can't tell you if anybody ever got paid or not, but I'm not holding my breath. Okay, so what are we learning here? That workers' dignity in the mansions and other places in the Peltz estates isn't being attended to, nor is the worker dignity of these corporations that are rated, particularly Wendy's, which is our topic. Trian Partners, the rating firm, refuses to bring Wendy's in the Fair Food Program, even though the shareholders seem to want this. But the shareholders don't control the board of directors. The board of directors is controlled by Nelson Peltz and his cronies by the Trian Partners, and they refuse to join the Fair Food Program. So this is a question of worker dignity, where billionaires put together $3 million weddings for their daughter, live in $123 million mansions, but can't bend down to be at the table and with workers. They can't stand to talk to workers, and that is a big problem here. Now, what we're looking at here is, can Wendy's guarantee there's no slavery going on in supply chain? Every time the Coalition of Immokalee Workers points out slavery conditions in Florida, they move the production of tomatoes and lettuce, etc., and buy it from Mexico. It's found out that there's even worse slavery conditions in Mexico than in Florida, so they take all of the production and they move it to Canada. Well, they're not really guaranteeing anything. So some of the rabbis go to the temple where the Peltz, I guess, occasionally go and say, hey, do what's right for the workers. Can you just do what's right for the workers? And Peltz says, I don't need this in my life. So Nelson Peltz is rating a whole number of corporations. He's on the board of directors of these corporations. And what's happened is, during his tenure, it's not gone well. Now, this came out in the Disney Corporation when Peltz was saying, hey, share price is going down, and I can do better for Disney. Put me on the board. And this, I think this just is, again, the emperor rattling the thunder cage behind the curtain, and really this person has no abilities to run a corporation. At a time that Trian takes over a particular corporation, in 50% of the cases, those corporations are doing worse off compared to the Standard & Poor's. And so when Peltz points a finger at Disney that he can do better. He really needs to look in the mirror at himself and the management of his own Triumph company. Now, many of the investors are starting to leave, not just because of this rabbi, but because the pension funds, the workers' money in the pension funds that props up Triumph company, they're saying, hey, we don't want to invest with a rater firm, Nelson Peltz, who's taking the money, the bread off the table, and allowing these egregious working conditions, modern day slavery, to continue. So let's look at how he makes his money. It's by insider trading. And I'm going to talk about that when he needed to invest money in Disney, pulled money out of Wendy's. And when he figured Wendy's wasn't going to be doing that well, Triumph partners, to all of them, and Nelson Peltz were selling shares, backing out of Wendy's. Now, a lot of people say, well, is this insider trading? It's illegal. Well, it turns out it's not illegal if you do the proper reporting to the SEC. The insiders can make these transactions, make a lot of money. And again, it's at the expense of the workers. That's my point. Follow the money. And this is a case of the Wizard of Oz. So allow me to make a bet on the future. I think that Nelson Peltz is going to be seen as the wizard behind the curtain, and investors are going to bail on Triumph, and he's going to lose some of his billions, but not all of them. And all of that money should be going to the workers who are being ripped off over the years by Triumph, corporate raiders. And this is just the worst kind of approach to capitalism, and it's not even good economics. And so please join me in this campaign to end modern day slavery, not just in the United States, but around the world in all of its various forms. And let's have these companies that are in food and beverage industry join the Fair Food Program, where workers are auditing what's going on and reporting what's true. Thank you very much.